The soft rustle of autumn leaves danced across the cobbled paths of Willow Creek Park as the golden sun sank behind tall, glassy buildings. In a quiet corner of the city, where laughter of children echoed faintly through the trees, a little girl with curly brown hair skipped happily, her pink sweater bouncing with every step. Her name was Lily, 5 years old, bright as a sunflower, and full of questions about the world. She clutched her father's hand tightly, her fingers wrapped around his with a trust that only children know. Her father, Daniel Hayes, was a man carved out of cold ambition and lonely success. A self-made millionaire, founder of Hayes Corp. Sharp suits, tight schedules, and boardroom dominance were his reality. But behind his stone-gray eyes and polished exterior hid years of silence, guilt, and secrets buried so deep he never thought they'd return. He had taken Lily to the park that afternoon to fulfill a promise. Just a simple hour together, something her mother used to beg for before the accident took her away. He hadn't always been this distant, not until tragedy hit. Since losing his wife 3 years ago, Daniel had learned to survive by working, burying himself in numbers, contracts, and deadlines. But Lily had her mother's spirit, soft, kind, and unrelenting. She'd tug on his sleeve, beam up at him, and say things like, "Daddy, I don't want a toy, I just want you to laugh." That day, for once, Daniel wasn't rushing emails or pretending to be present. He was there, really there, sitting on a park bench as Lily giggled and offered her imaginary tea to a squirrel. That was when it happened. Lily suddenly froze mid-step, her tiny body stiffening as her eyes locked on something, or someone, across the park. Her lips parted. Her hand rose, pointing. "Daddy!" she screamed, voice shrill and piercing. "Daddy, that's my brother." Daniel's breath hitched. The world seemed to tilt. His eyes darted in the direction she pointed. At first, he saw only a boy, maybe 6 or 7 years old, kneeling beside the sandbox, helping a smaller child build a sandcastle. But then Daniel saw his face. The boy looked up, laughing as sunlight kissed his skin. And in that moment, time fractured. The boy looked exactly like Lily. Same hair, same dimple on the left cheek, same sparkle in his eyes. Daniel stood abruptly, heart pounding. This was impossible. He had one child, just Lily. He took a shaky step forward. Then another. The boy looked up again, and this time, their eyes met. And Daniel knew. He didn't understand how, but deep in his bones, he knew. That boy was his son. Suddenly, a woman approached the boy from behind, calling his name. "Aiden, time to go, sweetheart." The boy, Aiden, smiled and ran to her. Daniel's eyes widened. He knew that voice. He knew her. The woman was Claire Mitchell. The woman he once loved before he ever met Lily's mother. The one who disappeared without explanation nearly 7 years ago. The woman he searched for in silence, who left only a note behind, "I'm sorry. This is goodbye." Claire hadn't seen him yet. She lifted Aiden into her arms, smiling tiredly, brushing his hair back with such affection that Daniel's chest ached. She looked older. Her once bright eyes were now rimmed with exhaustion. But she was still Claire. Daniel's feet moved before his brain could. He crossed the grass, dragging Lily gently behind him, her eyes full of excitement and confusion. He stopped just as Claire turned. Her breath caught. Her eyes widened. The color drained from her face. "Claire," he whispered, as if the name itself could crack the years apart. Is he?" Claire's eyes flickered to Lily, then back to Daniel. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Aiden stared up at the tall man with a curious tilt of his head, clinging to his mother's shoulder. Silence spread between them like a storm cloud. Then Claire whispered, barely audible, "Yes. He's yours." The words shattered whatever wall Daniel had built around his heart. He staggered back, eyes burning. "But, why? Why didn't you tell me? Why did you leave?" Claire's lip trembled. "Not here. Please. Let's talk. Somewhere private." And so, Daniel, with Lily in one arm and 1,000 questions in his mind, followed Claire to a small cafe nearby. They sat in a quiet corner, Aiden sipping a chocolate milkshake as Lily, still confused, asked Aiden if he liked unicorns. Claire took a deep breath. "I didn't leave because I wanted to. I left because I was scared." "Scared of what?" Daniel's voice cracked, his knuckles white around his coffee cup. "You. The man you were becoming. So driven, so cold. I found out I was pregnant, and I didn't know how to tell you." You were climbing the corporate ladder like nothing mattered. I convinced myself you'd see him as a mistake. So I ran. I thought I was doing the right thing. But every day since, I regretted it. Daniel felt like the air had been punched from his lungs. Claire, I would have stayed. I would have chosen you. Both of you. You didn't give me the chance. She wiped a tear. I know. And I'm sorry. Lily, watching from the corner, leaned in close to Aiden and whispered, "You really are my brother." Aiden nodded. "I guess so." Lily beamed. "Cool." As the sun dipped lower outside the window, Daniel looked at the two children, bonding instantly, like they'd always belonged together. And in that moment, something shifted in him. Something unspoken but undeniable. The next days were a blur. He couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Everything he thought he knew had cracked open. He started making time for the park. Not just with Lily now, but with Aiden too. Claire, hesitant at first, let the visits happen. The children were delighted. They had so much in common it was eerie. The same favorite color. The same dislike for spinach. Even the same nighttime giggle when tickled. But as the days grew warmer and the bond stronger, Daniel realized he was falling again. Not just in love with the children, but with Claire too. He watched the way she patiently tied Aiden's shoes, how she never raised her voice, how she still had that old laugh that once made his heart race. But he also saw the pain in her eyes. She had been through so much alone. One rainy evening, after dropping off the kids, Daniel asked, "Why didn't you come back all these years?" After Aiden was born, Claire looked away. "I was ashamed. And by then, I saw the headlines. You had moved on, married, a child. I didn't want to interfere." Daniel closed his eyes. "But you didn't know she was gone." Claire shook her head. "I didn't." A silence fell between them. And that's when Claire did something she never thought she would. She handed him an old letter. "I wrote this for Aiden. For when he turned 10. To tell him the truth. I never meant to lie forever." Daniel opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was everything, the love, the fear, the regret. By the time he finished, his tears were mingling with the rain outside. That night, Daniel sat alone in his apartment, staring at two framed photos on his desk. One of Lily, one he printed of Aiden just hours ago. And he made a silent vow, he would never abandon them. He would fight for his son. For the woman he lost. For the family he was just starting to find again. But as one truth comes to light, another begins to rise. Because someone had seen them in the park that day. Someone who had a stake in Daniel's future. A silent enemy. A threat he didn't know existed. And they weren't happy that the past had come knocking. Daniel Hayes had faced boardroom betrayals, legal battles, and the collapse of multi-million-dollar deals, but nothing had prepared him for this. Rediscovering the woman he once loved, meeting the son he never knew, and trying to rebuild a family with fractures that went far deeper than he realized. In the weeks that followed the park incident, Daniel became a different man, one his employees barely recognized and his competitors couldn't figure out. He wasn't distracted, he was focused, but on something more important than quarterly profits. Every spare moment outside his company was spent with Lily and Aiden. For the first time in years, Daniel's mansion echoed with laughter, messy footprints on the floors, and sticky handprints on glass tables. Claire had been hesitant at first, unsure if Daniel could truly change, but what she saw in him now wasn't the hardened, self-absorbed businessman she had once fled from. It was a man trying to make amends, not with words, but with action. Aiden bonded with Lily like they were born together, which, in a way, they had been. Siblings, half in blood, whole in heart. Daniel tried to shield them from the media storm that followed after a tabloid journalist caught a blurry photo of Daniel and Claire holding hands outside a children's bookstore. Headlines screamed, "Reclusive millionaire seen with mystery woman and boy, secret family." It spread like wildfire, threatening to unravel everything Daniel had just begun to build. But Claire remained calm through the chaos. "Let them talk," she said softly. "We know what's real." Daniel wanted to believe that. But just as he began to dream about a future together again, the past came clawing back through a single phone call. It was after midnight when his phone buzzed. He answered groggily. "Daniel Hayes." The voice was unfamiliar, clipped, and precise. "You might want to look into who's really raising your son." "What?" Daniel sat upright. "Who is this?" "I'm someone who knows more than Claire ever told you." The line went dead. Daniel barely slept. The next morning, instead of heading to the office, he drove to Claire's small apartment, his heart pounding with confusion. She welcomed him in with a warm smile, pouring him coffee like she always did now. Aiden and Lily were giggling in the other room, coloring cardboard castles with markers. "Claire," he said quietly, "is there something you haven't told me?" "About Aiden's birth." She froze. Her knuckles went white around her cup. "Why do you ask?" He told her about the call. The voice. The warning. Claire's shoulders slumped. "I was hoping we could forget that part." "What part?" She took a deep breath. "When I left you, I wasn't just scared. I was pressured. Someone didn't want us together. Someone powerful." Daniel blinked. "Who?" "Your father." Silence fell like an avalanche. "My father's dead," he said slowly. "Has been for years." Claire nodded. "But before he died, he found out about me. About the pregnancy. He came to see me. Told me that if I didn't leave quietly, he'd destroy you. Said your entire future was on the line, that he had influence, connections, and money. He made me choose." Daniel felt cold wash over him. His father had always been a hard man, one who believed love made men weak. But to blackmail the woman he loved into vanishing. "He paid me," Claire continued. "Enough to start over. He made me sign a contract. That's why I disappeared." Daniel stood up, pacing. "That's monstrous." Claire nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "I never wanted the money. I just didn't want to ruin you." Daniel clenched his fists. "He's gone now. He can't hurt us." Claire looked uncertain. "Are you sure?" Over the next few days, strange things began to happen. Daniel's company servers were breached. His board members received anonymous tips about hidden scandals in his past. And most chilling of all, Claire received a letter with no return address. Secrets don't stay buried forever. Someone was still watching. Daniel hired a private investigator, a man named Reed, sharp-eyed and loyal. Within a week, Reed uncovered something stunning. The man making the threats was not his father. It was Victor Stanton, a rival billionaire who had once tried to buy Hayes Corp. And failed. Stanton had invested in Daniel's downfall for years, waiting for the right scandal to pounce. And now, he had won. Stanton had discovered the secret child and was preparing to expose it in the dirtiest way possible, by filing for custody of Aiden using forged documents and a claim that Daniel had abandoned his responsibilities for years. If he succeeded, Aiden could be taken from both Claire and Daniel. It was a cruel, calculated move. But Daniel wasn't the same man he used to be. He wouldn't run. He wouldn't hide. And he definitely wouldn't lose his son. So he fought. He gathered his legal team, the best in the state, and launched a countersuit against Stanton. Claire, terrified but standing tall, gave sworn testimony. She even handed over the old contract she'd signed under pressure, one that revealed Daniel's father's illegal coercion. The courtroom was a battlefield. For weeks, the family's private pain was dragged into the spotlight. Headlines flipped again. Corporate tyrant's hidden child caught in billionaire feud. But then, something extraordinary happened. Aiden, barely 7, asked to speak in court. "I want to be with my sister," he said boldly, gripping the microphone. "And my mom. And my dad too. I just got him back." Even the coldest hearts in the room softened. The judge, an older woman with kind eyes, deliberated for 3 days. And finally, she ruled in their favor. Daniel Hayes is hereby recognized as the legal father of Aiden Mitchell Hayes. Sole custody remains with Claire Mitchell, with full shared visitation and joint parental rights granted to Mr. Hayes. The court finds all outside claims by Victor Stanton to be fraudulent and malicious. Daniel didn't cry. The wedding was small. Not because they couldn't afford something lavish, but because Daniel and Claire had learned that the most valuable things in life weren't measured by glitter, diamonds, or extravagance. They were measured by laughter at the breakfast table, late-night talks about fears and dreams, and tiny arms wrapping around your neck in the middle of the night whispering, "I love you, Daddy." It had been 6 months since the courtroom battle, and though the headlines had faded and Victor Stanton's threats had vanished under legal fire, the emotional scars still lingered. Daniel had proposed in the same park where his daughter had screamed a truth that would change their lives forever. Now, as he stood at the altar, holding Claire's hand while Lily and Aiden threw petals in chaotic joy, he felt something he hadn't known for years: peace. True, genuine peace. But perfect moments never last forever. 2 weeks after the wedding, the cracks began to show again, subtle at first. Aiden stopped smiling as much. He grew quiet during dinners, staring out windows instead of talking. Daniel assumed it was just a phase, maybe a reaction to all the recent changes. After all, the boy had gone from a quiet life with his mother to suddenly being thrust into a millionaire's mansion, new school, new routines, even a new last name. But Claire noticed it too. Aiden's drawings grew darker. His eyes lost their sparkle. And one night, she found him sitting on the floor of his room, clutching a picture of Daniel with Lily. "Aiden, honey," she said gently, kneeling beside him. "What's wrong?" The boy looked up, his voice barely a whisper. "I don't belong here." Claire's heart broke. "Of course you do, baby." "No," he said, shaking his head. "I was a secret, a mistake. You said you were scared to tell Daddy about me. That's why you left. So I wasn't supposed to be here." Tears pooled in Claire's eyes. She had never imagined her son carrying that weight in his little heart. She tried to explain, but he didn't want words. He wanted truth. Daniel came home to find Aiden asleep on Claire's lap, tear stains on his cheeks. Claire looked up at him. "We need to talk." Daniel sat down. "I know something's off. I just didn't know what." Claire explained it all. And Daniel, normally so composed, felt like the wind had been knocked out of him. His son thought he wasn't wanted. The next morning, Daniel canceled all his meetings. He took Aiden on a surprise trip, just the two of them. No mansion, no driver, no assistants. They rented an old pickup truck and drove out of the city into the mountains. Stopping at gas stations, eating burgers, telling stories, building a tent. That night, under a blanket of stars, Daniel looked at his son and said something he had never said out loud before. "When your mom told me about you, it felt like the universe gave me a second chance. I was selfish back then, Aiden. I didn't know how to love people without hurting them. But the day you and Lily held hands in that park, I realized I didn't need to be perfect. I just needed to show up. And I will. Every day. For you." Aiden looked at his father, his voice shaking. "But why didn't you find me?" "I didn't know you existed," Daniel said honestly. "But now I do. And I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never doubt how much I love you." Aiden nodded slowly. "Okay. I don't want to be a mistake." "You're not a mistake," Daniel whispered, pulling him into a hug. "You're my miracle." When they returned home, something shifted. Aiden smiled again. Lily welcomed him back like a knight returning from battle. Claire saw the way Daniel carried their son through the door, like he was the most important thing in the world. And in that moment, all the broken pieces began to heal. But life, with its unpredictable edges, wasn't done yet. One day, Daniel received a letter from a woman named Marissa Bell. It arrived with no return address and no postage mark, hand-delivered to his front gate. The letter said one thing: "You think you've learned the truth, but you haven't. Aiden's story isn't over. Meet me at the Willow Creek orphanage." Alone. Daniel's heart dropped. He didn't tell Claire at first. He didn't want to stir up fear again. He went to the orphanage quietly. It was an old building, abandoned years ago but still standing, barely. There, in the back garden, stood an elderly woman in a long brown coat. She turned slowly as he approached. "You don't know me," she said, "but I knew your son before you ever did." Daniel frowned. "What are you talking about?" "I was the midwife," she said. "The night Claire gave birth. And I know who else was in that room." Daniel's blood turned cold. "Your father," she continued. "He didn't just threaten Claire. He made her believe she lost the baby. But it was all a lie. He took the child, handed him over to a secret caretaker. But the caretaker, me, couldn't do it. So I returned him to Claire, in secret. Told her the truth. That's why she ran again. She wanted to protect him." Daniel staggered back. "But why now? Why tell me this?" The woman stepped forward. "Because your father didn't do it alone. Someone else helped him. And that person is still close to you." Daniel blinked. "Who?"